Welcome back to Wounded for War. So today I want to announce that we're going to be moving in a new direction on the videos. We're actually going to be shifting gears. And the reason why is because as I've been really started this ministry a while back, about 6, 7, 8 months ago, I forget what it is, but I've been putting out these videos, and what's happened is I've been preaching the gospel message, just the simple gospel message through different scriptures. But what has been kind of ringing in my ear and the questions that I hear from people often is, why should I believe? And as I've really chewed on that and pondered how I even came to believe and how many other people came to believe in Jesus Christ and Him crucified, buried, put on a cross, buried, and then resurrected again, and beating and defeating death, and therefore worthy of me worshiping Him because He promises that He will help me defeat death and live a new life, and all that comes with death, like my sin proclivities or my missing the mark, all those sorts of things. I've been chewing on that. What I found is that the best place for us to research that question of, is Jesus God, or who is God, and is He worthy of me believing in it? I've come to the place of understanding that John, the book of John in the Bible, is the best place that answers that question for us. As a matter of fact, you may have heard that there are 4 Gospels in the Bible, and that's right, but there's 3 of them that are called the Synoptic Gospels, and those 3 are written from a vantage point of the human origin of Jesus moving forward. But you see, John's a bit different. John wrote his book long after the other 3. And why? John wrote his story from a different vantage point for a different reason. That reason was, at the time John wrote this, there was false teaching. These teachers rose up. So Jesus did his thing, right? And then the disciples go out and they're spreading this news about him. And in that time, what happens is, just like anything else, the waters get a little bit murky because people start to add to or subtract from the message. And so what we find is these 3 guys that wrote the Gospels, people are reading them and they're becoming faithful to becoming a follower of Jesus Christ. But at the same time, there's also what's called the Gnostic group, the Gnostics. They brought in a certain heresy or false teaching. And what was that? That was that to be a Christian was, go ahead and put your faith in Jesus Christ, but then there's other added things you have to do or things you don't do that make you a superior Christian. And John is hearing this, and he's getting the reports of all the different beliefs that are being added or subtracted from the basic gospel. And so he writes this from a different vantage point in saying, I'm not going to come at this from his human origin, Jesus's, and going forward. I'm going to take it all the way back. I'm going to take it back to Jesus and his divinity, that he was before the beginning of time, his God nature, basically. And so, maybe you find yourself asking that question today. Who is Jesus, and is he worth me calling God? And if he is he worth me following? Well, we're going to spend the next weeks, as long as it takes. We're going to go through the book of John, and we're going to cover this book in a way that what we're extracting out of it is the rich essence that he wants us to gather. And what is that rich essence he wants us to gather out of it? He wants us to believe and move forward in our belief. And so he literally starts his book with an essence of who Jesus is from a divine nature, and then he moves from that to just saying, very simply, I write this stuff so that you would believe. He makes his motive known up front. I want you to read into this clear as day that Jesus is not just mere man, but he's of origin from the heavens. He's God, and therefore he's worth worshiping. He's going to then go on and he's going to give 7 different we would call them kind of miracles today, but signs and wonders or the miraculous works of Jesus. We see 7 of those in this, and they're all geared towards who he is as well. Speaks to him being God. You know, he makes his agenda known up front. He's not shy. John's kind of a bold guy, right? He also then spends some time contrasting, and we're going to see this, and I want you to pick up on it. That's what I'm telling you up front. Look for the contrast of light and darkness, and belief and rejection. These are themes that you're going to see throughout this book that are super important, because what he's doing is he's not letting you skirt around the issue. You see, C.S. Lewis once said that you can make Jesus Lord or a lunatic. Based on the claims that he made and the things that he did, you either call him a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. Because he's either lying that he's God, and he's not a good teacher, he's a false teacher, or he's good and worth listening to, but the reality is if he's God, he's Lord. He's not just someone that you can listen to and it's just another voice that I get to go ahead and take in. That's not gonna work for what John leaves us with. John's very serious about how he approaches this. Either you're going to make him Lord or you're going to make him a lunatic. That's it. That's it. So, when we look at these light and darkness, belief and rejection, contrasts, when we look at John clearly defining that Jesus was of God origin, not human origin, we're going to find ourselves with the question answered at the end. We're going to come to, and I hate to put it this way, but we're going to judge God. We are. We're going to judge whether he's God. And then you're left with one question: will you follow? And so John starts in this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. We already see all of the things that I just spoke about. In the beginning. So he goes back to the very beginning, the origin of Genesis, the book of Genesis, where essentially it says he was looking over darkness. He makes light. He hangs the stars in the heaven. He creates man. He creates earth. But the unique element that we're going to find here, and that we're going to find also in the beginning, is that there was 2 individuals there at that time. A lot of religions want to make Jesus just mere man and not elevate him to God, taken away his deity. But it's clear in Genesis and here that it says, in the beginning was the Word. And I know, why wouldn't you just say Jesus? I like to read it this way. In the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. And Jesus was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Jesus, and without Jesus, not anything was made. In Jesus was life, and Jesus was the light of men. It's best to read it that way, but why? Why put Word in there? Well, the Greek philosophers at the time, this would make sense to them. You see, word, the logos, that word goes back to the origin of the word logos in the Koine Greek. Well, in that day, these Greek philosophers basically had this philosophy that thought preceded doing. In other words, this pulpit is an object, it's a creation, but that creation was someone's thought first. They were big into words and thought and processing through, and they were trying to find essentially the meaning of man, right? But what they missed was, and John wants to bring us to it, is he wants to go further. They go, okay, well, this is created, so there was thought put into that, and John wants to say, yeah, there was thought, but that even implies that there was a thinker. And so he's saying that there's an origin far back, beyond what you guys can even comprehend. He says in the very beginning, there was Jesus. You notice in Genesis it also says that, and God was sitting there and he says, hey, let us make man in our own image. Who's he talking to? It's Jesus and the Father. So then it goes on and it says, and the Word was with God. So Jesus was with God, and the Word, Jesus, was God. That's clear. Now, there are religions that make him lower than God. They change wording in here. You have to manipulate the Bible to change that. But it's clear that he's God. Now it goes to the origin of man. Now it goes to creation. It moves forward, right? And it says, all things were made through him. So he created everything you see. He's the creator. He's the author of all of it. Not anything that was made wasn't made without him being the maker of it. In him was life, and life was the light of men. So the very first section of this book, he's being very bold and upfront about his basically his agenda. I want you to believe, and I want you to believe that Jesus is who he says he is. And I'm going to build a case, and I want you to understand it and analyze it. And that's what we're going to do over this next season. We're going to go week by week, and we're going to trudge through this book, and we're going to look at his claims and who he is and what he does. I want to contrast that with our own life and our own desires and our own heart and what we see in this world. And we want to ask that question and come to that conclusion. Is he God, and is he worth following? So, join me next week as we outline the first parts of the chapter and dive into it and really kind of break it apart to examine that claim and to make your own conclusions. Again, welcome back to this Wounded for War, but in some ways, welcome to a new season where we analyze and break down the scriptures so that we can search our hearts and look forward into possibly a new life for each one of us as we walk and follow closely as the disciples did through this book and see for ourselves, is he a liar? Is he a lunatic? Or does his claims and his actions require me to call him a Lord and follow him? I love you guys. I'll be praying for you as you pray for me. And I hope to see you soon.